How to make a cinnamon roll. I'm going in with my disappearing ink pen and outlining my template onto a tan piece of felt. I'm making sure that I also outline all those swirls because obviously they're the most important part of the cinnamon roll look. But from there, once you have it outlined, you'll move on to cutting it out. I usually start on the back side or the outside of the cinnamon roll and then make my way into cutting out the swirls. The swirls tend to be a little difficult to cut just because it's so narrow and tight, but just try to do your best. From there, I'm going to be moving on to the second top piece of the cinnamon roll, which I'm going to be outlining onto a dark brown felt. You don't have to worry about outlining the swirls on this one because it will sit underneath the tan piece of felt that you just cut out. Once you're done cutting that out, you'll then start to arrange the top tan piece on top of the dark brown piece. You're just matching up the edges and then making sure that there are still gaps to show that dark brown coming up through the tan felt. So for the cinnamon roll, I'm going to be stuffing the tan piece on the top just to give it more depth. So usually I glue things together just so that it doesn't move as I'm stitching. In this case, I don't want to glue that tan piece to the dark brown felt, because obviously I'm going to go through and add stuffing to it. So once you have it pinned, you're going to start attaching your tan piece to your dark brown piece, which is you're just taking your thread and coming up from the back side and then just along that edge of the tan felt, and then you drop your needle down into the tan felt before pushing it back into the backside of the cinnamon roll. You will continue the stitch along that whole edge of the swirl until you get to the starting point of the cinnamon roll. I used to do cinnamon rolls by just rolling felt and gluing, but I felt like it was time for me to upgrade my cinnamon roll. So this is definitely an upgrade from what I used to do. But once you get to the start of your cinnamon roll, you will want to secure all the stitches that you just did. So you'll want to flip it over, take a little bit of felt with your needle, and then before pulling it all the way through, you'll run your needle through that hoop, not once, but twice, and then pull tight and cut off the extra. So now we're going to go back to the center of the cinnamon roll. This tool I feel like is necessary for this the cinnamon roll if you're going to stuff, because it's very, very tight and it's hard to stuff with your fingers. So I got it off of Amazon. It's listed in my bio. But what we're going to do is we're going to stuff from the center and work our way out. So you're taking a little bit of polyfill, and with this wand, I'm going to call it my wand because it looks like a wand. What I'm doing is I'm twisting the handle and I'm twisting the polyfill onto the claw that's at the end. And then I'm taking it and just sliding it underneath the fold of the tan piece and then just kind of stuffing it. You don't have to get crazy with the stuffing because you don't want to pull too hard on your stitches, but you just want to stuff enough so that it pops out a little bit, gives it some depth. Once you're done stuffing an area, you're just going to move on with your stitch. So again, it's the same stitch you just did on the other side. So coming up along the edge of the tan piece, dropping your needle down into the tan piece before pushing it back towards the back side of the cinnamon roll. I usually do 2 to 3 stitches before I add stuffing, because you don't want to add too many stitches because it's so small. It might be hard to stuff if you go too far. So again, just keep doing that swirl until you get to the starting point of your cinnamon roll, and then we're going to stop stuffing at that point. Again, you don't have to stuff for the cinnamon roll. The stuffing is a little advanced, so if this is too much, just glue that tan piece onto the top of the brown felt, and then you will do the exact same stitches. You just don't have to worry about stuffing. So at this point, I am stopping right here when it comes to my stuffing, but I'm going to continue the same stitch along that whole swirl. The reason I'm stopping the stuffing there is because I am going to be adding obviously a side to my cinnamon roll, and when I go in to add the side, that's when I'm going to be adding the polyfill to the side edges. So again, once you get to the beginning of your cinnamon roll, you'll want to secure all the stitches that you just made. So you'll flip it over and secure those stitches. If you see some extra felt, like the tan felt is peeking out right there, that's fine. Just take your scissors and trim it down so that it meets and aligns up with that dark brown felt. But from there, again, you'll want to secure everything. So run your needle through the felt, and then before pulling all the way through, you'll run your needle through that hoop, not once, but twice, and then pull tight and cut off the extra. When you flip your cinnamon roll over, you should see that the middle part, center part is stuffed, and then the outsides aren't connected. They're flaps, which is perfect. That's what you want. From there, we're going to move on to adding the sides of my cinnamon roll, which is outlining it onto a tan felt and then cutting it out. It will be this long tan strip. And then we're going to start with matching up the edges of the top of the cinnamon roll to the side of the cinnamon roll. So we're going to take our needle and we're going to push it, go between the two pieces, push it through the top of the cinnamon roll. And then from there, pull it all the way through and hide the knot that's at the end of your strand or your thread. And then you're going to go up and over that edge, push the needle back through the side of the cinnamon roll and come up between the two pieces and then pull tight. This will be the start of your blanket stitch, and you will do this stitch along the whole edge of the top of the cinnamon roll. From there, I am just kind of maneuvering the felt so that the edges line up before I push my needle, this time through both pieces of felt, and then before pulling it through, running my needle through that hoop and then pulling tight. You will move over just a little bit again and do the same exact thing. Push your needle through all the pieces of felt, run your needle through that hoop, and then pull tight. I will do a couple stitches and then I will stop and add polyfill. So I think it's like 4 or 5 stitches, and then I will take my wand and do a little bit of polyfill and then stuff it and then continue my stitches from there. Again, don't add a lot of polyfill. You don't want to put too much pressure on your stitches. But you will continue this along the whole edge of the cinnamon roll until you get to the starting piece again. Once you get to the starting piece, you will have a little bit extra left in your side of your cinnamon roll. That's okay. We're going to trim it off so that the two edges meet and are side by side. Okay, so here I'm trimming off the extra, matching up the sides, and then just continuing my blanket stitch along the top before dropping it down. So once I'm done with the top, I will take my needle and drop it back into the cinnamon roll. And then from there, I'm going to match up these sides. So I'm going to turn the cinnamon roll out a little bit so that I can get a clear pinch on those edges. And then from there, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to push it through both pieces of felt on the sides or on those edges. And then I will take my needle again, come up and over that edge and come up between the two pieces and then pull tight. Again, this will be the start of your blanket stitch that you're going to do along that whole edge. So you're just going to then move over just a little bit, run your needle through both pieces of felt, and then run your needle through that hoop and pull tight. And just continue that blanket stitch along that whole edge of the cinnamon roll, connecting the side pieces together. Once you get to the end of that edge, you'll want to secure everything that you just did. So you will run your needle through your hoop, not once, but twice, and then pull tight. This time leave your extra thread, you'll need it for later. So I'm going to move on to adding my cardstock to the top of my cinnamon roll. You don't have to do cardstock if you don't want to. I usually do it to add more structure to my felt food. So once I glue that in place, I'm going to move on to the base of my cinnamon roll, which I'm just taking the top piece of my cinnamon roll and outlining it onto a tan piece of felt. Don't worry about doing the swirls or anything. You won't need it. It will just be the base of the cinnamon roll. From there, once I have it outlined, I'll move on to cutting it out. And then I will also be adding cardstock to the base of my cinnamon roll as well, also to give it structure so that it's not all floppy or weird with the polyfill. So again, just going in with my glue gun and gluing the cardstock to the base of the cinnamon roll. From here, I'm going to take my thread that I didn't cut off, and I'm going to line up my edges. And then from there, I'm going to take my needle. Once I have it lined up, I'm going to push it through the base of the cinnamon roll and come up between the two pieces. This is, again, going to be the start of your blanket stitch, and you will do a blanket stitch along the whole edge of the bottom piece of the cinnamon roll. I find it easy if I can line up the edges and I pinch the edges together with my thumb and my index finger to keep them in place as I'm doing my stitches. So then you're going to move over just a little bit, push your needle through both pieces of felt this time, run your needle through that hoop, and then pull tight. Okay, it's a little awkward at first when you're getting started with the blanket stitch. Just keep in mind, keep those edges together. Okay, once you get a couple stitches in, I usually throw in some polyfill because I feel like it gives it it makes it a little bit easier for the edges to match up as I'm stitching. So again, just doing that blanket stitch along the whole edge. And then once you get a couple stitches in, throw in some polyfill so it helps you keep those edges together. Once you get closer to your starting stitch, just make sure that you stuff the cinnamon roll as much as possible. I like to make it nice and firm. I like to also push out the edges so it looks nice and plump. So just stuff it as much as you want, and then before you stitch up that hole. But once you get back to your first initial stitch, I usually go 3 to 4 stitches past so that I am kind of securing all those stitches that I did before I run my needle through that hoop, not once but twice, and then running my needle back through the cinnamon roll and then cutting off the extra. I will then take this puffy paint and I will put it along the whole edge of the cinnamon roll and let it dry overnight. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I think it gives it a nice little look. And there you go. You have cute little cinnamon rolls for your play kitchen or bakery. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. You can find the template for purchase in my Shopify account, which is linked in my bio. If you're wanting handmade cinnamon rolls by me, just send me a quick message and I can help you with that as well.